In theory, a plague that can cause chaos, if not managed correctly, does sound like a pretty cool interactive feature in Dragon's Dogma 2. But this particular plague is leading to players accidentally speedrunning the game in the worst way possible. Players are seeing their saves completely destroyed along with their cities thanks to an illness called Dragonsplague. The Dragonsplague causes pawns to completely lose control and turn into weird-looking dragons. And the idea sounds terrifying on its own, but the real issue arises when you find whole cities completely taken over by the plague. This is leading to many NPCs just disappearing from the game, and some of those NPCs have some fairly important quest lines attached to them, meaning that players are facing entire cities and quest lines being permanently removed from the game, causing them to have to start a whole new save. And as you can imagine, that's not exactly going down well with fans, as one player took to Reddit to vent, saying, "So I'm playing the game, I'm in Melv, I rest up because some of my pawns had reduced max HP and I'm waiting for the ox cart to take me to the capital. One of the pawns nukes the entire village because of Dragonsplague and I had no inkling at all they had caught it, no voice lines, no comments of staying away from them, no glowing red eyes. My save is now because of this mechanic." And to be fair, I can totally understand the rage, as the player had sunk 34 hours into this save before it was destroyed by the plague. The worst part is that it's a simple cutscene too. You don't even get a chance to fight and save the city from being completely nuked. And no one really seems to have an answer as to how to spot it if they're even infected, as the comments in the Reddit thread are just full of people theorizing on how to know if a pawn is infected. Not exactly helpful when your whole save could go up in flames in an instant. But, dear viewer, there is some hope, as while it's not an official confirmation, this player seems to have found a pretty accurate way of helping you spot infected. The player goes on to list the following to identify Dragonsplague. Infected pawns will refuse to obey your commands entirely and make excuses for it. I'll do as I like, I shall act independently, things like that, after specifically being asked to do something. You should be able to tell right away by giving a few command prompts. The plague can only be gotten rid of by death or passing it on. So a hired pawn that's infected can be dismissed, but once your pawn starts showing signs, you have to kill them or let them die and respawn them at a riftstone. Red eyes or a flickering red glow are a classic sign, so keep helms off your pawns. Disobeying commands entirely and requiring multiple prompts, rather than just being snarky and doing it right away, and standing clutching their head as if stunned or dealing with a headache. A response to this post in the comments claims that the first time this happens, you do actually get a pop-up on screen, saying that the pawn has become defiant and independent, along with increased performance in combat. But after this happens a second time, you will get no warning, so it is completely up to you to identify the signs and interject immediately. So, let's say you identify that a pawn has the Dragonsplague. What can you do? And what's the next step? Well, fortunately, there are 3 options to choose from. If a pawn you have personally hired has Dragonsplague, you must immediately dismiss them, throw them into deep water or off a high cliff. Brutal, I know, but important. Or just intentionally let them die in combat. If your main pawn has Dragonsplague, you basically repeat the previous process, but this time you'll want to bring them back using a Riftstone, allowing them to return to your party without the dreaded Dragonsplague. And the third and final option? We strongly would not recommend this one, as it is extremely unreliable, but your main pawn may actually be cured if another player hires them and they decide to pass on the Dragonsplague to another one of their pawns. Not only is this one incredibly unreliable, but it takes time waiting for another player to hire the pawn, so you're just best off using the first 2 options. Some good news is that while the effects of Dragonsplague are pretty immediate, it does take quite a while for the symptoms to progress to absolute destruction. No one has managed to identify an exact time frame, but players are pretty confident that at the very least it's a few in-game days, giving you plenty of time to recognise and act on the symptoms. To try and avoid a game-ending tragedy, we'd recommend avoiding the time skip feature excessively in the game, especially when you've just hired new pawns or recently fought a dragon or drake. If you've taken all of the above steps into account, you should be able to avoid the Dragonsplague disaster. But what can you do if the plague has managed to infect and destroy that all-important quest-giving NPC? Well, you're not going to like the answer. Wakestones can be used to revive important NPCs, but they are also extremely rare, unless of course you're willing to open your wallet and buy a Wakestone for $1, which is definitely going to piss the fan base off, considering the hate Dragon's Dogma 2 has been getting for its microtransactions push. Until there's a fix, we strongly recommend to brine absolutely everyone while resting at an inn, or just lob them off a cliff and try and stop this ever happening. So there you go, that's everything you need to know about Dragonsplague in Dragon's Dogma 2. Let us know down in the comments if your game has been nuked by this mysterious illness, or if you have any tips on how other players can avoid it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more Dragon's Dogma 2 guides like this, because we have plenty on the way. And while you're with us here at GG Recon, YouTube has carefully selected this perfect video for you, so why not check that out here.